So welcome, Eamon. Eamon Williams from OneAdvanced to iTWire. Firstly, perhaps, Eamon, can you just give us the elevator speech of OneAdvanced and then perhaps your current role with them?
Yeah, sure. So, OneAdvanced, I think a lot of people would probably know Port, which was what OneAdvanced took over. In particular, OneAdvanced are in the marketplace of powering the world of work. So we've got a number of different products, but in particular today, we're going to be talking about their OneAdvanced product, which is really for source to contract. So it can do everything from, go to market right through to supplier to supplier management and contract management. And we'll talk a bit about that today and how we're supporting procurement in particular and the raft of data that they sit on top of. So, yeah.
And your role?
My role, I actually work with the, I suppose, new business consulting as a procurement specialist for those guys. So I'll come in and I'll actually talk to the teams, see how they're doing, what they're doing, and how they're doing it. In particular, how we can support them with that in their procurement, their supplier management, and contract management. Because we know now that all that risk is now put into the guys in procurement. Which previously it wasn't. It's like, oh, they're the cheapest price, let's go with those guys. But now there's just so much risk that procurement needs to take on. So I come in there, talk to them, have a look at what they're struggling with, and then see what we can support them with solutions.
So what are they struggling with, Eamon? I mean, the world has changed dramatically in the last months, even, weeks even.
Yeah, well, that's right. So, I mean, if you have a look now, what used to be things that we could look at, say, over a 6-month period, there might be some disruption, things like that. It's now come down to months, if not months, hours. Something could happen in the US right now, and within a few hours, it could easily affect supply chains, things like that within procurement. And what I see is, the global effect of us all being connected and so tightly connected, right? So we only need to have a look at what happens in the stock exchange in the US or in the UK or whatever it might be, and how that'll affect us, and in particular, how we're so connected to these other countries now as part of our whole procurement process and supply chain.
So because we need to import a lot of our goods and goods in particular, are we disadvantaged more so than a lot of other countries, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. There's not much nowadays that's actually manufactured here. A lot of it comes in. We might assemble it here in Australia. So those suppliers that we use, become very, very vulnerable. And no more can be said about that than having a look at COVID, right? So all of a sudden there's world shortage on a mask. Who would ever think that? Or a world shortage on toilet paper, So it just goes to show how vulnerable we are and how much we actually import in. So yeah, so being able to be reactive to that and proactive, right? So really being able to move and pivot fast with other suppliers that you may have already have pre-qualified within a solution, for example, would help a lot with these very vulnerable supply chains that we have.
Is there any one particular issue? I mean, there's geopolitical issues, tariffs are probably now a bit more front of centre than they were before. Is there any particular issue there, Eamon, that perhaps procurement are struggling with where OneAdvanced can provide a solution to?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where we're really taking people on that journey. As part of my consulting with procurement, we have a look at where they currently are and where they need to go to. And the big thing is actually being proactive, not reactive, right? So simple things like right through to very, very complex type contract life cycle management. But if you have a look now, I mean, every company we're talking to could literally have thousands and thousands of suppliers. Of all those suppliers, I'll use the term from a mum with an ABN and right through to the big multinational companies. But it only takes one person one supplier to make a mistake who is not covered or some type of certification has lapsed or something like that, become a major issue, right? So once again, it's like we can roll all that up into a dashboard, allow for procurement to see that, especially in a decentralized procurement model, but being able to manage contracts throughout the organization, being able to see when a contract's going to expire, how many of those contracts are going to expire, how many contracts have I got under management right now. All of that type of information, everybody we've been talking to lately is still trying to manage that within like a SharePoint environment, trying to manage that on spreadsheets. If they have an audit could take months to get all that information together. So it's huge risk within an organisation to try and still manage that way. And this is where we can come in, take that data that procurement's sitting on top of. It's so rich, that data they're sitting on top of. And then you actually start to be proactive. You start to be able to invest strategically into your procurement and into your teams, into your contracts, and into that part of the business. And that's where we start to see very big returns on investment by being able to manage your contracts, and that through software, or allowing that to support your teams.
Is this where you talk about agile contracts that is part of your portfolio?
Yeah, 100%. One of the things we talk about is that a contract should be a living, breathing thing. Traditionally in the past, you might sign up for a 3+1+1 contract, or it might be 5. And some of these contracts are 10-year contracts, right? So they do the contract, they throw it in the corner, and hopefully in 10 years' time we come around. But what we start to recognise now, that there's so many moving parts within that contract that needs to be monitored, and the software allows that monitoring to happen, right? So whether that be some type of certificate that's coming out of compliance, or maybe that supplier is being bought out and has moved on, or whatever it could be, a takeover bid. It might be so many different things that could be affecting that contract. And in particular, T's and C's get affected all the time. Even just rolling over the contract itself. Every year that rolls over, is that an opportunity for procurement to start doing a little bit of work there? Hey, why don't we just do the CPI this year? It's not 8%. Why don't they try and negotiate for 3%? There's all these things that, once we start to look at and we start to work with our contracts as a living, breathing organism within the organisation, and not just a static piece of paper signed and thrown in the corner, we can start to look at strategically running these contracts through the life cycle of them.
So how do you shift somebody in procurement's mindset from a set and forget to this agile component? It sounds like something they may not be used to.
No, they're absolutely not. But I think what's really shifted now is that workload that's come onto procurement, they're expected to do this no matter what, and they're expected to do it with the same amount of people that they've got. But now they've got all the different hats on as well. So now they've got to be an ESG expert. They've got to manage their suppliers. They've got to manage their contracts. They are absolutely recognising that it's not possible to do all this through spreadsheets and SharePoint and things like that. Or if they are doing it through that, then we come and show them an easier way of doing it, and they straight away recognise the value in doing that. We typically, when we're talking, we'll already have the executives will already have the buy-in that procurement need this support, and that it's a very high risk area of their business, and this is something that they need to cover off. So yeah, the mindset's definitely changing within procurement. They recognise that this is something that they need to do.
So the buyer of OneAdvanced, is that a procurement person that needs to go to the CFO and say, I need this tool, or is it the CFO saying, guys, you need this tool?
Yeah, it's actually sometimes a bit of both. We're finding, the traditional procurement person is going to the CFO and going, help. I need some help in managing this. I would say probably 9 times out of 10 is what falls out is the fact that they've had an audit. They've had an audit within the organisation, and suddenly they realise that there's maverick spend. Which is maverick spend is people using their credit cards instead of going through the proper processes and just claiming it back. Or there's just all these different areas of which they should procurement needs to get a bit more of a handle on, and that's because they have have a lot of their contracts in all different parts of business, right? So how do they then allow us to manage them, but manage them under what the right procurement rules are? Okay, so yeah, we're finding it's the hardest sell is a procurement person buying software for themselves to support them. It's actually a difficult thing to get through. But what we do we work with them to show them the business case, and once they show the business case to you know, the CFO and the CEO and the people like that within the organisation, they go, oh, that's a bit of a no-brainer, isn't it? It's going to save us X amount of dollars. We're going to reduce our risk. And, you know, and then next time they do an audit, audits will take 20 minutes because all the information's there. They know where all their contracts are. They know where all their suppliers are. They know all the information that they need, and they can get it to somebody straight away. So.
And what does your onboarding process look like, Eamon?
Quite simply, for our standard solution that we've got, we're looking anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to get it up and running. So what we did is we took us, you know, 20 years in the organisation of running this software with different organisations. We took all of our knowledge and we started to realise that there's a certain pattern of things that just repeats over and over and over. It's always the same thing. Our software is, you know, capable of huge amounts of looking into huge amounts of data and, you know, doing all sorts of workflows and you name it. But what we found was that everyone wanted everything all at once, and it would take 12 months for them to try and get a project up and running. So what we did is we reboxed our solution into little chunks that you can take on one piece at a time. So your first chunk might be what we call our standard. Take that on. What we'll do, we'll build your dashboards out to manage all of your contracts and all of your suppliers, right? You can recognize the value in that straight away, move on to the next. And so we just build them on a map. We take them on a journey instead of trying to build this mammoth thing all at once, which is what was done in the past. So yeah, the really simple onboarding for us now, like I said, 4 to 6 weeks, get people up and running, get people using the software. One of the things that we talk to them about too, our software isn't about being in the software. We've set the software up so that it alerts the person that something needs to happen and brings them into the software. So that's not about sitting there all day inside of our software. In fact, we don't want that either. We think what should be happening is you only get in there to do something when you know something needs to be done. For example, we might have contracts coming up for renewal. Okay, let's alert procurement to say, hey, it's time, or whoever's monitoring that contract within the organisation. Hey guys, you've got 3 months. You need to start looking at a tender or whatever it might be. Or it might be suppliers' certifications are going to expire, or their insurance certificates are going to expire. You know, that information is sent to the people, not people scrambling once they've found out that they've got suppliers on board that don't have them.
Is there any particular sectors that your software works best?
Yeah, we've definitely local government and government agencies in particular, we find, and that's probably because of the procurement rules, right? And in particular, the type of legislation that says that, you know, if over a certain amount, you must go out to tender. And things like that. And obviously then very important for certifications and certificates and insurances and things like that. Another sector that's really emerged just recently is aged care. Aged care is about to go through a massive Act change in November this year. And, you know, using like a chat GPT or that to read what's going to change, there's an enormous amount of changes that needs to happen. One of the biggest changes is that aged care are now going to be responsible for their own suppliers to make sure that their certifications and things like that are all in place. And this is going to be huge. So the aged care provider could then be held liable if someone's gone out to a home to help a patient and, you know, they don't have the correct certifications in place, or police record checks, or you name it. So obviously police record checks are becoming a big thing. If we start to have a look at, you know, the different stories we're getting out of Victoria and things like that, where they weren't in place. So you can see that those type of areas where it's very important to monitor that, and how hard that would be to do across spreadsheets. In particular, if you look at a big aged care provider, they might have 5,000 suppliers, which, you know, one-man bands, right through to, you know, cleaning contracts that are quite large. So yeah, in particular, they're the areas that we are really focused on. Any of those areas where there are a lot of contracts, and maybe out like someone who looks after buildings, for example. But yeah, very much out of the box. We've got a lot of the policies written into the contract, into the software now, for local government and government agencies. And in particular, we've loaded it up now with aged care as well.
So if that comes in I think it's the 1st of November, that law change.
Correct.
That's only a few months away. As you said before, you take 6 weeks to get up to speed with OneAdvanced. So what would your advice be to those in the aged care sector? Because I don't know how much notice they've been given of the November 1st change.
Yeah, so I'm talking to quite a few aged care agencies right now who are absolutely struggling just with supply management only. What I would say is that, yeah, guys, you need to get on top of that. It doesn't matter. A lot of people are holding back a bit to see what the changes are going to look like, because each week they're still making some changes to the Act as they're moving forward, but there's one thing that's not going to change, and that thing is supply management. They are going to be responsible for the certifications of the people working for them and going out to their patients. That part, get it in 6 weeks, build it out, at least manage that part of it. And then you can build, like I said, you can build upon our product from that, right? So if the Aged Care Act goes down this way, we can easily just reprogram the system to do that. If it goes this way or that way, or what's the contracts going to look like in the future? What new certifications are they going to require? Who knows what they're going to bring through? There's so many things they keep changing with it, but there are some things that are definitely set in stone, which obviously came out of the Royal Commission, and a few of those are, yeah, police checks must be had. They have to spend at least so many hours with a client each day. Those things are now going to be set, and that's get the backbone of the platform up and running, getting people used to it, and then obviously any of those change once again because we're living, breathing. We can change, we can pivot to adjust the software to whatever that Act change might be.
So yeah, your source to contract. Can you explain that, or is that your agile contract just in a different terminology?
No, well, it's source to contract is the name of the software, but it's often a term that's given out into the marketplace as well. So if you think about going out to market or going out to tender, we've got a module as part of our software for that. And then the second part to that is supply management, and the third part of that is contract management. But what we do is we've broken it up into 2 pieces really. So you go to market piece is sometimes not required, right? Because your things like by New South Wales, or in Queensland there's another product. I think they use like a vendor panel or something like that up there for their sourcing. But the second part to that is where we come in, and we manage the contracts themselves and the supplier management. They're very tightly knit, and this is outside of their ERP system, by the way. That information is pushed back into the ERP, so it's actually to work alongside the ERP, not replace in any way, shape, or form. And that's because a lot of the ERP systems, although you can load contracts into them, that's all you can do. You can't do the active. I mean, you can get down to the point where you're starting to run supplier risk assessments as well. Like you can actually look at how did that supplier perform last year? How's that supplier perform last month? And all that information can be fed back into our solution. And then once you've got your suppliers on board, you push all that information back into your ERP. So the whole idea is it's seamless the whole way through.
Is there anything that the procurement guys are telling you that they're worried about in the future, whether it's tariffs or something else, or is it just because they're now inundated with so much work?
Yeah, look, there's a couple of key points that come out. One of those is the fact of wearing these hats. If you'll have a look at the ESG hat, the one that they're very concerned about at the moment is your modern day slavery. That's a big one. I think everyone's talking about that. Which one of my suppliers has it? Which one of existing suppliers has it? Which one of my existing suppliers don't have it? Which one should have it? And that's all information. Once again, we can flow through up into a dashboard to help them manage that type of thing. Another one is a good one that's been coming up is like Aboriginal participation. Now, most of the government agencies we're working with need to hit a number. And it can take them, if someone turns around to them tomorrow, it says, what percent are you at? It could literally take them months to work out which contractors qualify, which contracts have we got on board that, once again, we can help with all that. And obviously the last one is sustainability. So once again, it's not just about putting a supplier on board that is the cheapest price anymore. We know that, right? could putting that supplier on board actually support what they're trying to do for the, meeting their net zero targets. That's the type of thing. Now, I mean, can you think about that? What part of a procurement's job role had that written into it? So, I mean, that's what I'm trying. They're the things that are really trying to keep these guys up. They're the questions that come up every time. Can you do this? Can you do this? And can you do that? And that's normally those three things that are really worrying them at the moment. Because at the end of the day, if someone comes in and does an audit, look, I've had a few comments just recently. So I'm like, we just did an audit. We didn't even realise we had about 20 contracts that were running. We didn't even know we had. It's because they're sitting on someone else's desktop over in the corner, right? So it's really important to see what those contracts and suppliers are you've got in your business and what risk you might be holding.
So apart from being procurement's best friend, is there any closing comments you've got for our viewers, Eamon?
Oh, look, I think I think it probably doesn't need to be said now. I've been to enough procurement events just recently. How are they using AI? I saw a great one the other day where the question was asked, as suppliers, who uses AI to respond to a tender? I think everyone in the room put their hands up, and then they asked the question, from procurement. They said, who in procurement uses AI to review the tenders, and no one put their hand up. So I think we're definitely, everything's moving towards that. I think we still need to start thinking about that. And in particular, just how vulnerable we are now in this connected marketplace. And that we need to get on top of our data. And we need to be working proactively on our data, not reactively. I think that's the main point I want to get across to everybody. But I know procurement understands that. It's just taking that first step, and we're trying to make it as easy as we can now by just giving a baby step to get started, and then it becomes very easy to recognise the value in moving forward with digital solutions.
Excellent. Really appreciate your time, Eamon.
Thank you.
Thanks again. Cheers.